Thank you, Marc. I think next session conference we should have only session with BWCCI because we have done lots of great things. Especially I think being a South Asian Women's Chamber of Commerce. When we formed the Women's Chamber of Commerce, one of the most important thing was raised by the women entrepreneurs of Bangladesh having a higher loan. And as you know, Bangladesh is a land of microcredit, but I always say microcredit is important, but it gives a sort of a comfort. It helps for the livelihood. But real empowerment, if you have a trade license, if you have a teen certificate, then you become much more empowered because when you pay taxes, when you pay VAT, that woman becomes much more powerful and then ask the government to be accountable. Women should not be seen only as a charity. Women should not be seen as like a mercy, which many men does or the country does or I don't know who does. But three things are very important when we started the Women Chamber is that having policy advocacy and policy advocacy for flourishing women entrepreneurs, having access to finance. And then we went to the bank and we said, we need bank loan. And the rate of interest was very high. And we said, no, we need bank loan, a low rate of interest. Then we said, we don't have properties in our name. Although, that's very interesting. There are religious people, these faith believers, they say so much good things are, okay, say that, that women should not do this, women should not do that, this is not good for the Muslim woman. But when a Muslim woman doesn't get even their rights, having that 50% of the properties, that never raised by anyone. And that's what we have seen that, the properties are not belongs to women and that's why bank doesn't give loan. So we started the advocacy and when we had, I'm very thankful again to Saib that they build our capacity. And that's what I would like to say to the audience, that build the capacity of the people so that they can do the policy advocacy to bring decisions or policies in favor of that particular group. And so when we had their policies, a separate policy for women entrepreneurs, no collateral, and the lowest rate of interest in the country. And now 100,000 women entrepreneurs has received. And can you imagine these 100,000 women entrepreneurs who is generating employment from 2 to 3 and now 10, 15, 100 or 200, how many employment has been generated? 160 million people of Bangladesh, 2 million people looks for job. Who is going to give that job? And we also have seen that, capacity building, access to finance, these are all important. And when we have trained our member, last year we have trained 5,000 women entrepreneurs covering 64 districts of Bangladesh. And Lily, who was just producing rugs, selling 3 to 4 rugs in a month, but when we facilitate her to participate in a trade fair, now she's selling 100 rugs every month. She's generating employment, she's paying tax. That helps. And also have seen that women sometimes was voiceless in their houses, and when they have become entrepreneur or doing good businesses, they have more decision-making role in their families. They are participating. Earlier, husband used to say, you don't know anything, you don't have any brain, sometimes they used to say, you women are useless. They don't say that. And we have seen also many women's husband has left their small jobs and joined the wife because they can earn more money joining the wives. So whole scenario in Bangladesh has changed. If you now land in Dhaka city, you will see big billboard. The banks are having product targeting the women entrepreneurs. I think that's wonderful to see that how we are progressing. So that's why policy advocacy is very, very important. Capacity building of the women's business organization is important. Capacity building of each individual is important. Because if you would like to see democracy, which is ultimately what is democracy? Democracy is freedom of fear. Democracy is raising your voice. Democracy is welfare. Democracy is creation of wealth for the people. And who is going to create all these things? It's the entrepreneurship, and that's why you need men and women. And who is this woman? These are human beings. So you have to use all human beings, men and women.
Thank you. You know, I just picking up a couple very small themes from that's a very comprehensive answer, but I think you just to pull a couple small themes out from the notes that I was jotting down. I like the way you described the fact that moving women into the formal sector, which is something that we look a lot at SIPE, and getting them trade licenses and you know, helping them expand their businesses makes them taxpayers, and as taxpayers, then they can start demanding accountability from the government. And I think that's a very, I think
Just
that's a
I
very.
would like to say one thing.
I think that's an interesting
quickly, Marc,
formulation. Please.
that in Bangladesh we've also
You can't
seen.
stop Selima.
Yeah. You should not. But just want to say that, you know, in Bangladesh, we have seen that the parliament, more businessmen are coming. So we thought, why women entrepreneurs should not come? And that's why we have worked with IRI, Women's Democracy Network. We have trained almost 200 women in how women entrepreneurs to participate and run for offices. And we have seen there are lots of women entrepreneurs now having grassroots political parties, you know, positions. And so women also need to know how to do bargaining. And these are all important. And I think the Chamber of Commerce can play a very important role. And thanks to SIPE for supporting the Women's Business Organization.
That was not a planted question, I can assure you. You know, and I think, Selima, also, and you know, just as sort of another thing I'd like to pick up from your comments and then turn that into my final question. You mentioned how guaranteeing women's ownership of property and property rights then gives them the ability to have collateral, and you need that collateral in many cases to go to a bank and get a larger size loan to grow your business. You know, that process of ensuring that women have access to property rights, and that process of ensuring that women have that open door at commercial banks is, I think, a very good lead-in to my final question before we open it up for questions from the group here. My final question touches on the issue of policy advocacy. How do your organizations approach the issue of policy advocacy? And what kinds of policy challenges do women in business in your countries face, and how are your organizations working to tackle those issues? So let's start with Rifa on that topic.
Yes, Marc. The Women's Chamber, together with the support of SIPE, we have embarked on developing a policy document, which we have been working with the Industry and Commerce Ministry. And we have, this is specifically targeted at women entrepreneurs in the SME sector, because most women are in the SME sector. And we have identified key policy issues and also made some recommendations in the establishment of gender-sensitive bank desks, so that there are, because women are bank shy, and therefore we are looking at having a gender-sensitive bank desk, and also in providing space for voicing women's concerns and in the SME policy making. Now in this area, we just, we have had success in our efforts. Just yesterday, we heard from the Industry and Commerce Ministry that the Women's Chamber has been allocated a seat in the advisory committee of the Industry and Commerce Ministry. So this is a feather in our hat, and this is a huge success to us. So thank you, SIPE, for all the support given to us. And we are also looking at forming, we have embarked in forming a federation of chambers, where we will include all regional women's chambers all over the island to under one umbrella, and this to be the one voice of women in Sri Lanka, so that we can advocate further policy.
Thank you. And I should just note that we have one of the driving voices also behind the creation of this federation is with us as well. Rizani is here, so thank you to her for all of her work. Srimama, on the policy advocacy side, let me kick it over to you, please.
Basically, Chamber in Pakistan knew nothing about policy advocacy. We were only focused on doing exhibitions and having women together and sulking about not getting what we require and what is our right. But then came a knight in shining armor and Psych entered.
I swear that these questions are not planted.
Oh, I know. But I had to say this because especially in case of advocacy, we actually did not know what it is. It was only, all we knew was lawyers, advocate, and that's all. Now, advocating for a policy in a proper, systematic way, we learned that. And then what we did is that we realized 2 or 3 main issues that we have to focus on. And we had to change, we had to bring women on the decision-making positions. This is one thing which we thought that if we go for small issues, they might not have that kind of effect. But so we said we have to talk about and raise our voice on having more women on boardrooms, having them on board positions, on decision-making positions. Because the decisions that are made for women are by men, and they had no idea what problems women face. When we started talking about the policy advocacy, and when we said that we have to have policy where women should be on decision-making positions, and at the same time there was another policy that we were working on at the same time was easy access to finance. Now, so when we started having roundtables on this with the financial institutions, we found out that financial institutions already had products for women, but they were not women-friendly. All of them said, no, but we have a product for you. When we went into the actual position, we realized that the products that they had developed for women were developed by men. So now, after our advocacy and after we've talking about it, we've started talking about it, we give interviews on this, whichever platform we find, on government level, in schools and colleges, at media, we talk about having women on the decision-making seats. And now that Germany has added women on boardrooms, they've passed this on Women's Day. Now we've picked up this thing. And we talk about this everywhere and we take this example everywhere. And when they say this is Europe and South Asia cannot do it, we said we can start it. We can start it here and we can be the first one in South Asia to have women on boards. So the result of this is that board of investment was made 3 years back. And when we raised our voice, we wanted women to be on the board. The board chairman said, but what can women do here? I mean, what contribution can women make? 3 years after that, after we've talked a lot about, it's 2 years. 2 years that we've talked a lot about it. Now when they have a industrial facilitation authority, IFA, they've added women to it. See? So these are the benefits that we get after talking about it and doing this policy advocacy in a more systematic manner. So these 2 things we've been looking at, and we are reaching our goals also. The easy access to finance and having women on boards so that the whole system is improved, the ecosystem, it becomes conducive for the women when it comes to the policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Srimama. That's actually a wonderful way of formulating it. When all decisions are made for women by men, I think shifting that calculus so that decisions that affect women are made by women. I mean, what sort of better definition of democracy could you have? People who are affected by decisions should have a part in making those decisions. Rita, on the policy advocacy side, talk to us a little bit about the kinds of things that FWEAN is looking to do with some of the work that you're aiming at now.
Before we started the advocacy program, like my other friends have said here, when we talked about advocacy, we thought, we can take all the points together and then go and just say, we want this, we want this, we want this. And we thought that if we ask for too many things, at least we'll get something. That was the concept. And then after training from SAIP, what we understood was like, I'm sorry, but I have to mention it. What happened was like we realized it's not asking too many things. It's just asking things that are very important and which will affect a lot of people and which will benefit a lot of people. So that was something we had to focus on. It was difficult to say which was best and which is last I go for. And in Nepal, we have this National Nepal Business Forum, which is a link between the business community and the government for a dialogue. And in that, we have a women's committee, which is led by FWIN with other women organizations also. And in that, they would always say, why don't you bring new issues? Why don't you bring new issues all the time? And we used to think, what has happened with us? We are coming with just 1 or 2 issues. And then, but with the training, what we found was, no, we will stick to these 2 issues, and until they are fulfilled, we will not go for other issues. So we kept on pressurizing on that same, and finally, it was a difficult program. It took us 4 years, but we managed to have the Entrepreneurship Development Fund created by the government. But it was a demand made by the women's organization, not just FWIN, but there were other women's organizations also included. So it shows that if you have a policy that you want to advocate for, you need to really focus on it and see whether it impacts a lot of people. And again, when we talk about, in the beginning, let me tell you, we were talking about small things like chicken and goats and rearing and all that only. Now our organization is talking about advocacy. What is it that we women want as a whole? So issues on policies like access to finance, new technologies, these are things we are slowly, at a time, we are putting forward with the government. And as we work out on one advocacy, what we have realized is, small other things come together. Like for instance, while we were advocating for the Entrepreneurship Development Fund, we sat with the Ministry of Commerce and Industries, and then looking around, we saw there were no women there. And you are making policies for women too. So immediately put up my hand and said, why aren't women included in this board? And maybe our voice and the way we were supposed to present ourselves, we did that, and we were invited to be in the board. So that is how we've slowly been pushing with the advocacy program. And on smaller levels where we can intervene ourselves, we've been focusing on joint land holdings. We've tried that in few of the villages in Lalitpur districts of Kathmandu. And at the same time also bringing the informal sector women into formal, like we've already agreed that they become taxpayers, they can demand their work. So that is some of the works that we have been doing.
Thank you, Rita. I think that's a very interesting kind of business way of putting the advocacy equation. Finding out, you went from having a lot of things that you wanted to focusing on one. You sort of discovered what your market niche was in terms of advocacy, and then you focused on those advocacy areas where you would have the highest return on investment and the most multiplier effect, where your advocacy would affect the largest numbers of women. And I think along those lines, and also tying back to something that Srimama said in terms of advocacy initiatives that can have an effect on the largest numbers of women, Srimama mentioned the issue of women on corporate boards. That's something, obviously, Manju, that India has done a lot of work on, and in fact, there are a number of statutes that cover those issues. So talk to us a little bit about what role FICCI and FICCI Flow can have in increasing women's representation on corporate boards, and what role you may have played in the advocacy process in order to get that passed.
Can I take the advocacy question first?
Please.
As a chamber, we do believe in policy advocacy, which is very, very important and crucial to the organization, because that is what the chamber's activity, one of the major activity is. And we do a lot of work in that because after all, policy advocacy is generating awareness. You can't push anybody, do this or do that. And you need to back up the same thing with a lot of statistics and data and interactions at different fields and different areas. So what we do is that we have a regular pre-budget memorandum which goes out from our organization to the finance ministry. And it cuts across all sectors. So what we do is we make women a part of it. It's not that women have to advocate separately, so it goes out as a chamber thing. So whether we do it as an MSME or whether we do it as a health or we do it as that, it comes out as one document known as a pre-budget memorandum from our organization. Now that has become a ritual, and which is how leads to also interactions with the concerned ministry. Now this is just one example I gave you. So that which does help facilitate certain things.
I'm getting the sign that we're at about 15 minutes left to go, and so I want to make sure that Selima has a chance to touch briefly on the policy advocacy issue as well, briefly, and then we'll open it up to questions maybe.